Let's look at some of Tesla's latest numbers. In the first 2 quarters of 2022, the company produced 568,000 vehicles. Tesla's market cap, aka how much it's worth, sits at $899 billion. And that's enough to earn it the 6th spot on the largest companies in the world list. Let's now look at Toyota's numbers. One of Tesla's direct competitors, they're expected to finish 2022 with a production of 9.7 million vehicles. So this means that in a single month, Toyota produces more cars than Tesla outputs in half a year. Yet Toyota's market cap sits at 197 billion, making it the 43rd largest company in the world. So let that sink in. How is Tesla nearly 4 times bigger than Toyota? How does this even add up? Well, it doesn't, right? This is capitalism. In June 2015, Snapchat CEO Evan Spiegel closed a 50 million financing round. Instead of investing it all into the company, Spiegel went and used a nice chunk of that change to buy himself a Ferrari. That's what you do, right? 2 years later, in June 2017, he was awarded an $800 million bonus for taking the company public at a $33 billion valuation. The most absurd part of that deal, his company lost $3.4 billion that year. And you could argue that this was part of an aggressive growth strategy. And to their defense, later down the line, they started playing around with advertising and they made a lot of money from it. The company made 1.1 billion in revenue in the last quarter of 2022. So that's really good. The only problem is that it managed to burn through it all and beyond, ending June 2022, $422 million in the red. There has literally only been 1 quarter in the more than 5 years since Snapchat went public where it made a profit. A small 22.5 million at the end of August 2021. That's not even enough to cover Spiegel's 30 million mansion in Paris. There are tons of stories similar to this one. Spotify, Airbnb, Pinterest, Dropbox, these companies have huge valuations, but they don't make a dime in profit because they reinvest everything into ultra aggressive growth, and the problem is that only a few make it out alive. The reason they're worth billions is because of the insanity of the stock market, not because they're making money. So how did we get here? Well, it all starts in the 90s, as it often does. All this billion-dollar madness began when the stock market on one side and the internet on the other side started mingling together in the late 90s and early 2000s. The stock market is the place to go to if you want to buy a share in a company. When you buy a share in a company, you own a tiny piece of that company, and if it goes up in value, you'll be able to sell your share back and make a profit on the same market. Now, why would your share go up in value? Well, here we run into one of the first problems of the stock market. Speculation. Nobody knows if the stock market is going up, down, or round in circles, right? That's from that movie, The Wolf of Wall Street. At the end of any trading day, your share will have either lost value or gained value, or it can also keep the same value. And everyone has the same 50% chance of guessing that. You, me, Elon Musk, whatever next big shot on Wall Street, nobody knows. That being said, there are some basic economic principles and variables that should make it easier for smart and knowledgeable people to anticipate what's going to happen to your shares. Things like the revenue, the net income, the EPS, the margin, the operating income. And back a few decades ago, these factors used to actually play an important role in determining the direction of the stock price of a company and therefore of the overall stock market. But then again, the internet came and all those variables kind of flew out the window. People became less rational. They started trusting the feelings and biases generated by the news, the search results, and everything internet related. And they stopped looking at the numbers and believing in the maths. And don't get me wrong, there was also speculation back then, back when the internet and iPads were not around, but everything was on a much smaller scale. The internet took that and made it a much bigger factor than it needed to be. And these days, the market is driven by what happens online more than ever before. It doesn't even matter if a company makes money anymore. It's all about whether or not it's getting good press online and whether or not Elon Musk is tweeting about it. And then it gets absurd. So look, this video is in no way intended to criticize any achievement by the entrepreneurs I mentioned. As often with those things, I believe you shouldn't blame the player, you should blame the game. It's very easy to fall into the trappings of modern capitalism and global expansion, and only a few entrepreneurs manage to avoid those traps, which we will cover soon in the video. And for those who do fall for the traps and just make, billions off smoke, essentially, it doesn't discredit their achievements, but it makes them part of a system they don't control, and it usually leads to greed, to nonsense, and to many mistakes. Enter Elon Musk, right? He arguably created one of the most innovative and forward-thinking companies of our modern times, Tesla. In fact, he didn't create it, he became the largest shareholder in it in 2004, and then he turned it into what it is today. Tesla was actually founded in 2003 by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning. Toyota had revenue of $62.3 billion in the second quarter of 2022. Tesla's revenue for the same period was $16.5 billion, or 3.5 times less than Toyota. Even if Toyota had a huge inventory and if Tesla was selling all its cars at double the price they sell now, it still wouldn't make more money than Toyota. This goes back to speculation and the irrational ways of the human brain. Tesla is cool, hip, people see it as the company of the future a lot more than Toyota. Elon Musk loves to tweet, he loves being in the news, making bold announcements, and this kind of contributes to building up the hype around the company. And so what happens when a company is hyped up? People buy more shares of it. This sends the price higher, and because the market cap is directly correlated to that share price, it creates a capitalist mammoth that appears to rival companies like Microsoft and Apple that are, 3 times older and way more profitable than Tesla. The price increase also happens to make Elon Musk a very, very wealthy man because as the largest shareholder of the company, he owns a ton of shares, 172.6 million shares to be precise. As a result, a slight increase in the company's stock price has an exponential effect on his net worth, which sends him into the centi-billionaire stratosphere. But none of this is actual money, by the way. No. Did you think that was money? No, it's not money. Elon Musk doesn't have hundreds of billions in cash sitting in a bank account. He only has a piece of paper that says he owns a big slice of a cake worth $899 billion. That's the worth of the company. So the question is, how does one turn this piece of paper into cash? Well, for starters, Elon Musk could do like every investor or employee looking to liquidate their wealth, and he could just sell a bunch of stock, right? Except in his case, it's probably not the best way to do it for 2 main reasons. Number one, when you're the CEO of the 6th biggest company in the world, you can easily trigger a selling frenzy if you get rid of even a small chunk of stock. People will start panicking, they will read your sale, you selling some stock, he doesn't believe in the company anymore, he's selling, so I'll do the same, and it's bad for the company. Number two, even if people don't panic sell, when you sell your shares, investors and stakeholders usually won't like the move. Again, as a CEO, you should show that you believe in the company and you should stay committed and invested in it. Instead, the easiest way to convert your paper worth into cash is also one of the most nonsensical. Go to the bank and get a loan using your shares as collateral. When you're a billionaire, you can get an almost endless line of credit this way, and this is a very common practice among many CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Larry Ellison from Oracle, Jim Walton from Walmart, and Stephen Schwarzman from Blackstone, for instance, they're all known to use the same practice to turn their paper worth into cash without having to sell any of their shares. Congrats! You've just learned how to convert thin air into cash. And in the case of Tesla, it's somewhat acceptable because even if the company's valuation is completely absurd, at least it's making money. But the practice of borrowing millions or billions against a piece of paper becomes a bigger problem when your company is not even making a dime, like Snapchat, as we mentioned earlier. So there must be a better way, right? Oh, yes, there is. Yes, there is. You're gonna love it. The reason behind Silicon Valley burning through hundreds of billions of dollars of investors' money is that these guys only see 2 scenarios to make a profit from their investment, and none of those scenarios include something along the lines of, hey guys, maybe the company should make money? No, they don't care about making money. They only care about their share of the cake. They only care about their slice of the cake. So they want, the bigger the cake, the bigger their slice is worth. So they only have 2 options. Number one, going public. Since they own a slice of the company, they'll be able to cash out if the company gets listed on the stock market by selling their shares or borrowing a ton of money against a piece of paper that says they have shares, as we just explained. They don't have to care about the company making money. They only have to care about the stock going up. The other option they have to make money is to sell the company. But investors usually like this approach less because it doesn't give them long-term exponential returns. Once the company sells, they only get a return on their investment once. They don't have the potential to delay selling shares, to wait for the shares to increase in value, or to only sell a portion of their shares. But with this option, they still don't have to care about how much the company is making because they just have to push for as high of a valuation as possible. Both of these outcomes are based on a very aggressive growth strategy, and that strategy itself is based on one of humans' biggest sins: greed, lust, and gluttony. You see, investors want billions, not millions. They want 10 houses, not one. And like Evan Spiegel, they probably want a Ferrari, not a Toyota. Who wants a Toyota, right? But thankfully, there are also some people who can see through the capitalist chaos and clutter and who decide to adopt a much more reasonable approach. Companies that grow slowly but surely, that don't award $800 million bonuses, and that stay private in order to stay away from the stock market chaos. So let's go through a few of those companies. It's good to show better examples, right? First example is Zapier. Zapier is a web-based product that allows end users to integrate the applications they use and automate workflows. The company makes over $140 million in annual recurring revenue. It was founded in 2011 and has been profitable since 2014. 100% of Zapier's workforce is remote, and they hold over $100 million on their balance sheets. This means that they most likely will never need to raise more money and to therefore depend on investors. They don't owe money to anyone, not even a landlord, because they're 100% remote. Zapier is worth $5 billion and only ever raised $1.3 million from investors. Everything else has been pure organic growth. And you may wonder, how do you get from a $5 billion valuation with $1.3 million in seed capital and $100 million in recurring revenue? Well, you do this by looking at how much the company makes and multiplying that number based on other internal factors. You also need to look at how much private investors are willing to lend you for what percentage of the company. If somebody lends you $100 million in exchange for 25% of your company, then your company is worth $400 million. It's still a bit of a pie in the sky approach, but it's a lot more reasonable than what we've seen with Tesla or Snapchat, for instance. Another great example is Basecamp. Basecamp is another company that was mostly remote since it started out in the late 90s and then went fully remote in 2020 when the pandemic hit. They don't disclose their revenue publicly, but as Jason Fried, the co-founder of the company, said himself in a response to a question about his company's revenue on Quora, "We don't disclose our annual revenues or profits, but both are in the millions. We've been profitable every year since we launched the company in 1999. Basecamp's achievement is even more impressive because it survived the dot-com crash of the 2000s while remaining private, and it hasn't given in to the temptation of selling or going public for the nearly 25 years it's been around. And they don't intend on seeking external capital or selling anytime soon. In 2010, Basecamp co-founders Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansson released the best-selling book Rework, in which they explain the foundational principle for their company, which I just summed up in a quick list here for you. Grow slowly or not at all, build half a product, say no to meetings, go to sleep, underdo your competitors. I highly recommend you read this book. I mean, these guys were like 10 years ahead of their time in 2010, and their work is now more relevant than ever. Their principles go against every single one of Silicon Valley's culture of hustling, putting in 18-hour workdays, and sleeping at the office. It's not something people are used to hearing, but it's definitely something worth paying attention to. Conclusion. The future of entrepreneurship. Especially with the current economic context, the Silicon Valley model is losing steam more than ever. Entrepreneurs and freelancers are looking at ways to grow sustainable businesses rather than more capitalist mammoths. It's not even that people are tired of putting in long hours, of not paying themselves for the first few years of work, or of sleeping at the office. Grit still pays off, and hard work still beats talent, and if you keep showing up, eventually your efforts will be worth it, right? The problem is that in times of crisis, money runs out, stuff loses value, and investors are more careful about where they put their money. Not only that, but the pandemic has made us realize that for most of us entrepreneurs working in an office from 9 to 5, remote work is often better. The flexibility it gives us allows for more time to work on our projects, hustle our way out, and create our own business along the way. So I guess the last words of this video are, if you've been looking to create your own business, there's never been a better time than right now. The only question is, which way do you want to go? The Elon way or the Zapier way? The choice is yours. The journey awaits. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you next week. Like, subscribe, comment. It means the world. More content always on the way. See you next week. Enjoy the journey you're on.